A good definition for the Hebrew word kodesh or kadosh, which we generally translate as holy, but a more enlightened and a more useful translation would render kadosh as transparent, a transparency. The world has a creator. The creator has a purpose. And yet the creation doesn't always allow the creator and his purpose to be visible. There's a lack of transparency. That which is holy is that which does allow the creator and his purpose to be visible, to be noticeable. So the sage was riding along the road in the times of the Talmud, and he noticed a man on the side of the road, and he said to him, "How ugly you are." And the man said, "Why complain to me? Complain to my creator." And he wasn't ugly anymore. The ugliness that is the lack of transparency, never recognizing, admitting, or revealing the fact that you have a creator and that you are not self-made and your life is not your own and is not about you, that transparency is what creates holiness, and it also creates beauty.
The etymology that's usually given for holy is separate, right? Kadosh is something that's been set aside, separated, removed. So how do you make that jive with transparent? I like that. It's an interesting word, but how does that work?
Well, yeah, the idea of sacred, reserved, set aside. That clarifies, that reveals, that proclaims out loud what the purpose of this thing is. So the more set aside it is, the more transparent its purpose is. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, actually, well, it makes, there's a phrase that was used that Descartes made famous, clear and distinct, when he talked about mathematical ideas, or any ideas, in fact. An idea was a good idea if it was clear and distinct, if it could be, in other words, separated. So is that what you mean by transparent?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how do you, I mean, we associate God with holiness above all. God is the Holy One, blessed be He. So how do you apply the word to God? God is transparent, God is clear. How does that work there?
Well, in terms of His holiness, we've got, that's a divine mystical secret to begin with. How does He get to be holy? You understand how we get to be holy, You devote yourself, you whatever, how do we describe Him as holy in the first place? So generally what we say is He's holy in the sense that He is far removed, right? He's above, beyond. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There are two parts to God. The part that remains apart, the part that remains apart, the part that stays in heaven, that's called Kadosh, and then the part that gets involved in creation is Baruch. So there's Kadosh and Baruch. But
although He seems to set up a parallel between His holiness and ours, the phrase He often says is, be holy because I am holy. So be like me, holy.
Right. So in this sense, we could say God is transparent in that when He reveals Himself, it's everything. There's no secrets left. You know exactly what He wants because He's transparent. And it's that transparency that, the story that the people at Mount Sinai, every time God spoke, they fainted. What, was it too loud? What were they fainting from?
Yeah, or even
dying.
Yeah, dying,
right?
yeah.
Had to be revived, brought
right.
back to life. Were they overwhelmed by the holiness?
Or the...
That's what everybody would say, right?
Right.
Oh, it was so holy they were... And what exactly does holy mean? What does that mean? Not loud? What else does it mean?
So what is the truth?
How does holiness overwhelm you?
Right. Mankind cannot handle too much reality. It's T.S. Eliot. Is that the idea that some are too real, too...
It's frightening when somebody can be so transparent. And when God came down to Mount Sinai and said, this is me, I am your God, this is me, the transparency of it was just too much.
It sounds, it's such a funny thing. It sounds right, and yet there's something about it. You would think that something that's perfectly true and transparent would be the last thing you'd be afraid of. Why is that so overwhelming? Why?
Because the most frightening thing to a human being is to become transparent, to lose all sense of self.
All sense of self. Okay.
In other words, if you're going to be that transparent, I have to respond that way to you. Well, to a human being, that means dying.
Right.
And not necessarily physically, but it means that's it. Then I can't be me anymore. If you're not playing games with me, then I can't play my game. You've disarmed me completely. Now, here's a very good example. People come to the Rebbe for $1, for a moment, right? Or maybe they ask for a blessing, I'm not feeling so well, and the Rebbe says, you should have good news. And the person walks away thinking, I really should keep kosher. Nobody said anything about kosher.
Right.
The person, maybe I should study some more. Maybe. Who said anything about... The Rebbe is transparent. And when you come in contact with the Rebbe, you become transparent.
Right.
And all of a sudden, you know what you ought to do, not what you do.
Right.
That's called holy. That's the real thing. But if somebody walks away and says, oh yeah, I met with the Rebbe, wow, he's got blue eyes. You missed it. You missed it. You didn't see the transparency.
Is that what it would mean for us to be holy like God is holy? To achieve that kind of self-transparency that God has?
And that's literally what God is saying. You've got to be holy because I am. We can't have a one-way relationship.
Opposite than hypocrisy, is that what we would call it? Or self-opaqueness? I mean, what does that mean? Being opaque to oneself?
Being
lying? Is it a matter of lying to yourself, or?
No, it's being conscious of your own reality to the exclusion. I ever once asked somebody, to what do you attribute your success? He was a very successful writer, speaker, or whatever. And people responded to him. So the Rebbe said, to what do you attribute your success? And he says, I went to good schools, went to a good college. I practice my craft. I'm always trying to improve and so on. And the Rebbe said to him, and your parents had no influence on this? And he said, well, I suppose. I'm sure they had some influence on my talents or on my habits or my work ethic or whatever. So the Rebbe said, just because you don't feel it doesn't mean you don't owe them. Can't you see past your own? You see what?
Right.
If you're so taken with yourself that it blocks out your view of others. So, the Holy Land, very much in the news lately. The Holy Land. What does it mean, a holy land? In this land, for whatever reason, God is not so invisible. You can't ignore God in the Holy Land because there's a transparency in the air. The air is clearer. And so you see its creator. A holy land means a land that reveals its creator.
Right. It's a transparent land.
It's a transparent land. And the objective is that it shouldn't be just one land. Every land should become holy.
On that model.
Well, here's the thing. Everything can be holy, which means everything can be transparent. You take a piece of leather and you turn it into a mezuzah. You don't see leather anymore. It's gone. It's now a mezuzah, an object of holiness. Right? It has become transparent. Leather has become transparent. The thing is that in the world in general, there are two levels of non-transparency. Evil and complete evil. Klippa and complete klippa. Right? There are those things that are neutral, like land, can go either way. Water. You don't have kosher water and non-kosher water. Water is kosher, unless you put something in it that shouldn't be there. So water is not holy unless you do something holy with it. It's not completely evil unless you use it for an evil purpose. Then what is it in its natural state? In its natural state, it is called permissible. It is not obligatory. You don't have to drink water. And it's not sinful to drink water or to use it in any other way. It's neutral. Neutral in terms of morality or godliness is translucent. It doesn't deny that it has a creator, but it doesn't devote itself to its creator either. Therefore, what the human being does with it will determine whether it is part of holiness or it becomes part of the completely opaque stuff.
So its nature can actually be changed by human activity.
Because
water
it's
can
neutral.
water, of course, is transparent, but it becomes
It's the ultimately transparent thing. That's why it purifies, it cleanses.
Right.
So,
and absolute evil?
Absolute evil would be those things that are forbidden.
That are permanently opaque. Cannot be...
Right.
It's interesting that...
You can't steal in order to give to the rich.
Right.
And have it be a mitzvah.
Right.
So the fact that you're using it for a good purpose, stealing cannot be a good purpose. It doesn't allow itself. It will not lend itself to the holiness of your purpose. So those things are called forbidden or chained. Asur, chained.
Right.
And therefore unavailable for holiness. The only way that serves any godly purpose.
I was just going to ask you how that, since it is part of God's universe, which is not completely transparent.
Right.
So what role does it play? Yeah.
Right. So the neutral stuff, it is our job to make it transparent, make all of that part of holiness, so it's no longer neutral but positive. And the stuff that is forbidden, the purpose that it serves is that we reject it, we refuse it, we condemn it. So there is destroying the evil and there is salvaging, right? So you can salvage that which is available, which is neutral, but you can't salvage the stuff that's... So doing
it's amazing that certain things are created in order to be destroyed, that's right. Their purpose is for us to destroy them, or for us to reject them, even just without destroying, just rejecting.
And on what grounds do you reject them?
On the grounds that God says to reject them, that they're intrinsic, that they're opaque, I guess, by this logic.
Right. Opaque doesn't mean somehow destructive or dangerous or malevolent. It simply means no godliness? Well, then I have no need for you. That's the ultimate rejection. If you can't help me with godliness, then I have no need for you.